Kids, aloha. Well, we're back again on a happy Sunday. And what we have for you is another true story. A true story that I've been thinking about all week. And by the way, the last episode, I blame you. I never got to say, I always say aloha. Aloha, kids. And at the end, I say aloha. And if you recall, I didn't get to say aloha. Do you know why? Do you know why I ran out of gigabytes? I'm still wondering what a gigabyte is, but I ran out. Now I've moved some things into a file by some friends that helped me. I don't know how many gigabytes I got left, so I'm going to keep this one short. This thumbnail is going to be crosswalks. Crosswalks is the thumbnail. Uh, it'll come full circle. What I'm saying, but that's the thumbnail. Now, in my fourth grade, I did learn some things. As you well know, in the past, I learned I wasn't going to read another book, which I didn't until 2 weeks before I was going to graduate, and I had amnesia, which we all went over in the past. But I'm just recanting on where we're at right now. Oh, by the way, Boogie says hi. He jumped up just before I pushed the button. The fourth grade I went to was in Phoenix, Arizona. It was Kenilworth. I didn't mention that in the past, I don't believe. Kenilworth School. It was named after Sir Walter Raleigh. It was Scott. It wasn't Randolph Scott. It was Sir Walter Scott. The teacher really brought this up because we learned a lot about Sir Walter Scott, and I know I'm just probably beating a dead horse with all you kids out there that are more experienced, but all you preschoolers and kindergartners, I've got something for you. Sir Walter Scott was a well-known, he wrote a lot of books, all right? He did write books, and I just happened to read one of his books in my fourth grade, which was Ivanhoe. And then, okay, I don't want to regress here. I started in my fourth grade in Raritan, New Jersey. Went 2,500 miles to Scottsdale, Arizona, Tonalea, which I read a book, which was Moby Dick. And then my fourth grade, I left Tonalea in Scottsdale, Arizona, went back to New Jersey, 2,500 miles. And on my fourth grade, I remember reading Animal Farm. And then after that report card, I went from Hillsborough, New Jersey, 2,500 miles back to Arizona, this time in Phoenix, Kenilworth, where I got to read Ivanhoe. And I think it was mandatory because the teacher was saying, Kenilworth, actually that's the book that Mr. Scott wrote. It was Kenilworth. That was one of the many books. He wrote a lot of books. He wrote books on tons of books. Well, I really remember Ivanhoe. I remember Rob Roy, and I remember Lady of the Lake. I don't know why I remember those, but those are ones that set off. I'm only giving you a little scenario here because Sir Walter Scott was a politician. In his day, in 1771, he came in to this planet Terrific, or Terrible, however you're looking at it, somewhere in August. You know how I am with numbers. August 1771, and he did a lot of amazing things. He transformed Scotland in a lot of their belief systems that they are today. He was a Presbyterian. I believe he became a Baptist. he did some things called the Restoration Movement. He read the Bible, so it was under Acts 2:38 that he had this Restoration Movement, basically to get salvation. There was some requirements, so he said that there had to be faith, there had to be repentance, and there had to be baptism. As we well know, I went over that a few times in the past with Sister, with her understanding of baptism. I'm not going to go back there. That would be episode 3, how I asked those questions. So Kenilworth was a school that I got to see from across the street. See, we lived on West Culver Street, which was west of Kenilworth, which, by the way, I believe Frank Lloyd Wright had something to do with the design and building of Kenilworth. As I said in the past, it was out of the 20 schools that I went to and I graduated, this one was the most opulent, magnificent one. It had pillars, it had oak flooring. There was a feeling when you went into these rooms that you were going to learn something. And I did, as you well remember, about the Vikings and Christopher Columbus, when I decided never to read another book. But before that time, I did read Ivanhoe in Kenilworth, which all of them have something to do with something, kids. Ivanhoe, Moby Dick, and Animal Farm all had a significant. Those are the 3 books that I read out of my fourth grades that struck off something for me. Like Animal Farm, we know that Snowball and Napoleon, the pigs, they actually had an intent in the beginning of a well-being for everyone. But as you recall, when they realized that the animals were taking their suggestions and the power that they had amassed, that it kind of corrupted them, all that power, which happens sometimes, kids. When people get power, they get tested a whole lot more than they do when they don't have the power. That's why sometimes, kids, you'll see people in positions, whatever walk of life they're in, and that power that they have, they abuse. They abuse this power. Just seems to be human nature sometimes. Or let's just say we get tested when we do have that power to use it with more, qualifying that energy positively than misqualifying that energy. We always get that choice. So that was Animal Farm, and then Moby Dick, of course, that would have to be attachment, wouldn't it? Moby Dick, Captain Ahab. Boy, he had an attachment, all right. He wanted Moby Dick bad, and he got him. But he went for that long ride at the end. It wasn't very positive for him because he couldn't let go of that attachment. As we all have attachments, kids, to whatever goodies we're holding on to. Sometimes it's just best to let them go. And it's only when we start thinking about, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be things that you are desiring that maybe aren't so positive, but you just can't let them go. Well, you have to think about it first. And then as soon as you think about it, somewhere down the line, they'll be able to leave you. Rather than not thinking about ever doing it, they'll stay with you. Usually how it ends up, that I've noticed. The third one would be Ivanhoe. I did learn something on that one because it had to do with loyalties to principle. Because if you're loyal to a principle, it doesn't mean it's going to be good in of itself. Because if you're dedicated to a moral code that's fundamentally unjust, you will be unjust, no matter how principled you may think you are. And that was one of the things I got out of Ivanhoe. So this thumbnail, it's going to be a short one. Oh boy, you're screaming, yay! Because I don't know how many gigabytes I got, and I put some, I had to give a foundation of Kenilworth, which I could see from my backyard, which had a big field to it. I remember, oh boy, it was fantastic. Back in 1964, families were just a little different. Maybe they're still the same in some places, but the dads, well, the moms got to watch. I don't remember any moms playing. We played baseball, and right in the big field, the dads would be there with the kids, and we were both. I was 10, but I remember some girls out there playing, and the rest of the all different ages, and we played softball, and it was fantastic. We had some really great times. The wives would cheer us on. They'd be like the cheerleaders, and then the dads made sure everything went cool too. But boy, some of those dads could really smack a ball, let me tell you. And then right after that, there was some high jumping stuff that they had off to the side. And then down a little further next to the school, that's where we played dodgeball. Oh, I love dodgeball. But you kids don't know what I'm talking about. You can't play dodgeball anymore. Maybe some of you do. That big red ball that you're supposed to dodge, or you catch, and if you catch it, then you get to throw it. It's a great game. I guess some people weren't dodging as much as they should have. That's why you can't play it anymore. So the thumbnail is crosswalks. I was playing in my backyard, or front yard, the fence, front yard, sidewalk, and there was a crosswalk going to Kenilworth. Just trying to give you a picture here. So one day, Bro and I, we were playing horseshoes or catch. I can't really recall, but I know we were in the front yard. And we saw this guy coming from the school area in our direction, and he had to cross the crosswalk. Well, he was, I don't want to say old. He had more experience. He had Levi's on and a white T-shirt, and he was just a guy with more experience. I don't know. Some people might say he was a bum. That would be judgmental. He was crossing the crosswalk, and as Bro and I were playing, we heard this boom. We look over, and here this guy is right in the middle of the crosswalk, laying down. And I guess it brought some people out. A lot of people were out all over the place now. And I'm looking and I'm saying, wow, I'm going to go tell my mom. So I ran into the house. Mom wasn't there. I went in the backyard. There she was. She was putting up she was taking down. She was taking down the sheets. Oh, you kids are fantastic. Remember the other episode, Mountain Lion Tracks? That's when Mom was putting up the sheets. Now she's taking them down. Hey, full circle with sheets. So she's taking down the white sheets. And I said, hey, Mom, there's somebody just got hit out there in the crosswalk. And she says, is he hurt? I said, yeah, Mom, it looks like he's bleeding. And she grabbed one of the white sheets off the line. And we went out there. And by this time, I guess some people had pulled him out of the middle of the road and put him up on the sidewalk right next to our fence. So he's right there next to our yard. So we get through the gate. Mom goes right over to this guy, and he's laying there, and he's got cuts, and he's bleeding. And she sat down next to his head, actually put his head up, and she had the white sheet on her lap, and she had his head on the sheets, and she was stopping the bleeding. And by that time, I think somebody was saying, "No, there's an ambulance coming," and now that I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to go there. So, Mom, we wait for the ambulance, and off he goes. Well, Dad gets home, and I guess Bro had already told him the whole story, and we're at dinner, and now I guess we were in the middle of the meal, and Mom had said she came up with a rule. What she didn't have very many rules, if you recall. All I had was Mom's one rule in episode 3 when Dad said good job when I could go beat up Billy the bully, and she wasn't too happy with that. And her rule was for me then to, I want you, son, to find a mortal enemy. I want you to find him. She said, yeah, find a mortal enemy. That means there's more than one. Find a mortal enemy, grab him, bring him over to your side, and he'll be your bestest best friend. He'll lay his life down for you, and that whole thing that I told you. That was her only rule that she had at that time. That was my first full fourth grade. Here I am on my fourth grade. She came up with another rule. You kids are fantastic. I never even thought about it. So her second rule was that she said for the rest of our life, she said, kids, that Bro and I would never ever walk across a crosswalk. We would run. Well, look both ways, she said. It's common sense. You look both ways and you run across that crosswalk. Well, you know what, kids? I've done that to this very day. Well, yeah, I can run. It's a fast jaunt. And I've always done that. And why I'm bringing this up for you kids, it's because since 1964 to 2000, I want to say 24 to keep the numbers right, but it's 2023. You could be watching this 7 years from now. I don't know. But for the time period of amount of years it is, from 64 to 2023, I have watched you kids, not you kids, but I've watched kids walk across a crosswalk and not even be well, you were either on some kind of device, earplugs or whatever it is, la 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 la, going, trusting a 2,000-pound vehicle to not hit you. See, you have to be really alert when you're crossing across. And I want to say further, do not stand on the corner of crosswalks. There's a lot of accidents that occur there. People come up on the curb and take out statistically hundreds of kids and people that are just standing around just chit-chatting. Chit-chat further away from the corners of these areas. That's all Uncle Martin's saying. For safety first. And by the way, when I say you can be a very intellectual person, but you have no common sense, all right? And that can happen. Excuse me. It happened on my one of my sixth grades. Out of my sixth grades, as you remember, we were all together as a class. One of those probably was up in Hillsboro. I remember her, one of our Mrs. B. Smith, I think it could have been Mrs. B. Smith, that said, I don't believe it was Princeton, could have been Franklin Township. Look up where Edison is. All right, Edison wasn't too far from us. Edison. Well, he wasn't too far from us either. Einstein. Thank you. Both these guys were in New Jersey. Einstein was very intelligent. As you well know, he used 4% of his brain. But now you Google how much of the brain you use. They say 10%. Oh, did we gain something? 7% somewhere? I'm looking around. I don't think so. I think we're all still using 3% of our brain. But I'm not going to argue with you. They said, and I believe it even at the time, Einstein was a genius. And he used 4% of his brain. Well, you know what they did? In either Franklin Township or wherever he was walking around, they had little signs, little white signs all over the place. It said, watch out for Einstein. Now, why would they say that? You know why? Because he was so a genius, he didn't have his mind on what was around him. He would just walk across the street without looking both ways. And you kids, even you preschoolers and kindergartners, know that you look both ways, right and left, before you cross the street. And Mom was going extensively further than this. And she said, I don't ever want to see you walk across a crosswalk, intersection or crosswalk. I want you to run. And so Uncle Martin has all of his life, ever since I was 10. when I had less experience. And now that I have more experience, I figured, what the heck? I might as well tell you kids that little cute story that was true, that set off something in Uncle Martin's mind that says it's very important to obviously look right and left. That's common sense. But some of you kids don't have common sense. You're so intellectually thinking about things, whether you're looking at your iPhone now or, back then it was a Walkman. We didn't even have a Walkman. So through the ages, I've been watching kids not running, let alone walking, and being aware of their surroundings is what I'm saying. That's all. So maybe I hit home on somebody, maybe not. As I said, this is going to be a short one because I got some things to do, but I do owe you one. I owe you one more. So I'll do a back-to-back today. I got to do some things, change my clothes, and get some stuff done. And I got because the last episode, that before I could say aloha, I did say I had something on whatever you read, make sure you finish. And that'll be the thumbnail for that one. Finish what you're reading. That'll be the thumbnail. This one was crosswalks. So until I see you again, which will be shortly today, Sunday, be well. Aloha. I'll be right back.